Very good evening to all of you friends. Welcome to the 462nd session of Telangana Jana Vedika, weekly session of Telangana Jana Vedika. Today, we have taken up a different subject owing to the conditions worldwide. The people in the world today require peace, harmony, and above all that, a fair and good family relationship. For that, we have taken why we need Buddhism. Though it is an Indian subject, the world requires Buddhism today. We have invited a top cop, former cop, Sri Anjaney Reddy Garu. And I thank Manoj, though Anjaney Reddy Garu is our family friend, but somehow going to a lot of pressures, maybe a lot of relocation and all those things, we lost touch with him, but Manoj has brought Anjaney Reddy Garu on board to us today. I'm thankful. And before going into the subject deeply, I would like James Prashant to do a small introduction of the subject and also introduce the speaker. Later, Dr. Atutota Srinivas, as usual, will be the moderator, will moderate the meeting today, and he will allow the speaker to speak. Thank you so much. James.
Thank you. A very good evening to everyone. I welcome you for the 462nd forum session of Telangana Jana Vedika on this Sunday. Our topic is why we need Buddhism today. India was a central link in a chain of regional civilizations since ancient times, and it retained her central position when civilization and culture spread eastwards into China and westwards into Europe. Buddhism achieved for India a far greater success in spreading the message of the Buddha, and in this process took Indian culture wherever it went. In the course of the first millennium AD, Buddhism led to the rise of a great spiritual and cultural community, which may justly be called the Buddhist Okumeme. In spite of the marked differences that existed between the various regions into which it penetrated and the many metamorphoses which it underwent, Buddhism created a profound and a far-reaching inner unity, a spiritual consciousness manifested in remarkable similarities in patterns of life and thought, not least in art. Buddhism helped many Asian peoples, tribes that were still underdeveloped by comparison with the advanced societies of India and China, who had attained a higher level of civilization. Thanks to Buddhism, they became aware for the first time of the fact that they belong to a larger cultural area and have a role to play within it. This applies not only to the people of Southeast Asia or Eastern Asia, Korea or Japan, but also to the nomadic people of Central Asia. The Central Asian people played a particular important part as intermediaries in the spread of Buddhist culture. About around 630 AD, Huan Sang says Buddhism was very well established in Bamiyan, Afghanistan. Here he tells us there were some tens of Buddhist monasteries with several thousand brethren who were adhering to the Hinayana school of Buddhism. Bamiyan being an important center of the Silk Road, and it is well documented how Buddhism flourished from here to all parts of Asia. These caravan routes used by Buddhist missionaries and pilgrims from about the 1st century onwards, and they were known as Buddhist routes in the Middle Ages. Trade was the first motivation that carried the ideas of Buddhism into China, and Buddhist missionaries, hearing encouraging reports how hospitably and reverentially information about Buddhism was received there, followed trade to spread the teachings of the Buddha. The scholar Kumarajiva did more for the spread of Buddhism in China than any other Indian missionary. He remained there until his death in 413 AD. Scholars from all across China came to him and became his disciples. During the 800 years after the introduction of Buddhism into China, many Chinese and as well as Indian scholars like Kumarajiva created more than 35,000 phrases, words in Chinese. New words had to be found for the new terminology, religious, philosophical, metaphysical, that Buddhism brought. There are reports of Indo-Korean connections going as far as 1st century AD. And in the 4th century, there were 2 monasteries established in Pyongyang. Buddhism came to Japan from Korea and China about the middle of 6th century, when the king in South Korea sent a mission to Japan with pictures of Lord Buddha and Buddhist folk tales. This school of thought has been retained in Japan daily life and is today known as Zen. The cultural contact with Central Sumatra, Thailand, Cambodia, Burma, Ceylon, all have their roots with the mission sent by Emperor Ashoka. In the Shramanic traditions, which Buddhism is part of, the concept of renunciation plays a central role. It is milder to sannyasa, the person who does labor or shram to gain enlightenment, acquires moral authority through this labor and liberates himself through teaching. These renouncers, instead of negating life or making revolutionary changes in society, were attempting to establish an alternative space and a system that would make moksha more accessible and social orthodoxy more flexible. When we read about Buddhist sanghas, while there is an element of hierarchy within them, but while taking decisions, the consensus that is required from the junior most to the senior most was well known and recorded. The culture of the Sangha was of consensus. Questioning is at the root of the process of thinking. It was the questions of Socrates that initiated great philosophical discourses in Greece. It was the questions of Buddha and other Charvaka thinkers and questions by others that provoked Indian philosophical thoughts. There used to be Kutuhala Shalas, where people gathered and debated ideas in India. In this context, it is very important to ask about the relevance of Buddhism today, which is one of the earliest philosophies in the world to put humanity at its core. To speak on this very important topic, we have Sri Anjaney Reddy Garu, former Director General of Police, Andhra Pradesh, and he was also the Tourism Corporation Chief for AP. He is well known for reviving Buddhist culture in the state. He is well known as an educator and is actively focused on police reforms. He realized there was an urgent need to give a push for students in Andhra Pradesh to take the civil services exams and started the Hyderabad Study Circle for their training. He was secretary to the Andhra Pradesh Civil Service Commission and revamped the organization. He started the AP Police Academy for non-IPS officers in 1986 and was appointed its director, which is now APA, the Telangana State Police Academy. As tourism chief, Sri Anjaney Reddy Garu created the Buddha Vanam on the banks of the Krishna at Amaravati, AP, and restored the Taramati Baradri in Hyderabad. He was instrumental in building the Mahabodhi Buddha Vihara at Mahendra Hills in Secunderabad which is the replica of the Amaravati Stupam, the third largest in the country. We are most privileged, sir, and honored to have Sri Anjaney Reddy Garu, former Director General of Police, in our midst. Now, before I hand over the floor to our moderator, as per our tradition at Telangana Jana Vedika, I would like to read the preamble of our Constitution. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. Thank you. Srinivas garu.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Telangana Jana Vedika Zoom online meeting ఇచ్చేసినటువంటి పెద్దలు శ్రీ ఆంజనేయ రెడ్డి గారికి మరియు వేదిక సభ్యులు మిత్రులు అందరికీ సాయంకాల నమస్కారాలు తెలియజేస్తూ అందరికీ స్వాగతం సుస్వాగతం. ఇవాల్టి అంశం చాలా ప్రధానమైనటువంటి అంశంగా భావించవచ్చు. ఎందుకంటే ఇవాళ ప్రపంచం అంతా కూడా అల్లకల్లోల దిశలో ప్రయాణం చేస్తూ ఉంటే, అంటే ఈ యొక్క ప్రపంచంలో జరుగుతున్నటువంటి అనేక రకాలైనటువంటి ఏదైతే అనార్థాలకు కారణం మూలం ఏంటి అనేటువంటి దాన్ని కూడా మనం ప్రశ్నించుకోవాల్సినటువంటి అవసరం ఉంది. ఈ సమయం లోపల మనం ఈ దేశంలో బుద్ధిజం మనకు ఎందుకు అవసరము అనేటువంటి అంశాన్ని మనం ఎన్నుకోవడం జరిగింది. కాబట్టి ఇవాళ ప్రపంచం లోపల ప్రధానంగా బౌద్ధ మతం అనేటువంటిది ప్రపంచ ముఖ్య మతాల్లో ఒకటిగా మనం చెప్పడానికి అవకాశం ఉంది. ప్రస్తుతం ప్రపంచం లోపల ఈ బౌద్ధ ధర్మాన్ని ఆచరించే వారు సుమారుగా 25 కోట్ల మంది ప్రజలు ఇవాళ ప్రపంచ స్థాయి లోపల బౌద్ధ మతాన్ని ఆచరిస్తున్నారనేటువంటిది ప్రధానంగా మనం చెప్పవచ్చు. ప్రధానంగా బౌద్ధం లోపల 2 ప్రధానమైనటువంటి విభాగాలు ఉంటాయి. ఒకటి మహాయానం అని, రెండోది థేరవాదం అనేటువంటి 2 విభాగాలు ఉంటాయి. ఇవి తూర్పు ఆసియా, టిబెట్ ప్రాంతం లోపల మహాయానం అనేటువంటిది ప్రాచుర్యం లోపల ఉంది. అంటే ప్రధానంగా మన యొక్క భారతదేశంలో కూడా మహాయానం అనేటువంటిది ప్రధానంగా ప్రాచుర్యంలో ఉంది అనేటువంటిది చాలా స్పష్టంగా చెప్పవచ్చు. గౌతమ బుద్ధుడు బోధించినటువంటి ఏవైతే ధర్మ సూత్రాలు ఉన్నాయో వాటినే బౌద్ధ మతానికి మూలాధారాలుగా చెప్పడానికి అవకాశాలు ఉన్నాయి. ప్రధానంగా అష్టాంగ మార్గం అనేటువంటి ప్రధానమైనటువంటి సిద్ధాంతాన్ని వీరు బౌద్ధ మతాన్ని చూడడం అనేటువంటిది జరుగుతుంది. ముఖ్యంగా బౌద్ధ మతంలో ప్రధానంగా చెప్పేటువంటి అంశం ఏంటంటే రాగము, ద్వేషం, మోహాలను అంతరింపజేయడమే ముఖ్యంగా వాళ్ళు చెప్పడం అనేటువంటి జరుగుతుంది. ఆ మతం యొక్క ప్రధానమైనటువంటి రాగము, రాగ, ద్వేష, మోహాలను అంతరించడమే ప్రధానమైనటువంటిగా వాళ్ళు చెప్తూనే మూఢనమ్మకాలు, మూఢ విశ్వాసాలు ఉండకూడదు అనేటువంటిది, శాంతి, అహింస, ధర్మము, మంచి సహజీవనాన్ని కొనసాగించాలి, మంచి జీవన విధానాన్ని కొనసాగించాలి అనేటువంటిది బౌద్ధ మతంలో ప్రధానంగా చెప్పేటువంటి ప్రధాన అంశంగా చెప్పుకుంటూనే ఈ దేశం లోపల బుద్ధిజం మనకు ఎందుకు అవసరం అనేటువంటి అంశం మీద శ్రీ ఆంజనేయ రెడ్డి గారు, మాజీ డీజీపీ ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్, వారిని మాట్లాడవలసిందిగా సాదరంగా ఆహ్వానిస్తున్నారు. శ్రీ ఆంజనేయ రెడ్డి గారు. సార్.
థ్యాంక్స్ సార్. శ్రీ రామారావు గారు, మనోజ్ రెడ్డి గారు, ప్రశాంత్ గారు, శ్రీనివాసులు గారు, let me begin first by thanking you all for inviting me to this meeting. This is the first time I have come to this group. I understand you have been there for 4 years now. We also have a Buddhist group called Sthirachitta. We have been running it for the last 3 years. Now we shifted from 4 talks a week, 4 talks a month to 2 talks a month. In the first place, I thank you for taking up this subject. Why do we need Buddhism in this country? It's very important. Many people ask me also, Buddhism is part of our culture, it's part of our history, it is dead and gone. Why are you so much interested in it? I tell them it is not dead and gone. It's very much part of our culture even now. Most of the things which you mistake for Hindu in Hinduism, originally these are ideas borrowed from Jainism and Buddhism. We should understand this thing first. So I would like to split this talk into two parts. The first part, in the first place, what is Buddhism? People have, many people have many ideas about Buddhism. Some people think Buddhism means vegetarianism. Some people think, Buddhism means, being kind, being nice, taking the example of Ashoka being a good ruler, planting trees, looking after animals, these kind of, ideas. But what exactly is Buddhism? That is the first part. Second part is, why do we need it? First part is important because we should understand the context in which we are discussing this subject. We all know, in fact, when people talk about Indian culture, they say, our culture started with Vedas. This is an ignorant statement. Even today, it's going on. The earliest Veda is 1500 BC, that is Rig Veda. But Indus Valley civilization is more than 3,000 years old, 3,000 or 3,500 years old. What is even more interesting, people have been living in this country for more than 60,000 years. Now, the latest from the genetic gene dispersal, it has been well established. This country has been home to human beings for more than 60,000 years. So instead of probing what was before the Vedic period, we have come to accept that civilization in this country began with the Vedas, which is not true at all. Much before the Vedas, there was a different, perhaps, culture. I think James referred to it briefly. Sramana culture. The Sramana culture is totally different from the Vedic culture. Sramana literally means Srama Padevadu, Sramanudu, one who endeavors, for his own enlightenment. This Sramana culture is totally non-Vedic and pre-Vedic culture. And then you have the yogi culture. For example, Indus Valley shows a yogi, which is now, taken as Pasupati, yogi culture. And then you have the culture of Mother Goddess, which is still there in Bengal and Eastern India. Cult of Mother Goddess. All these things were there parallelly. But the first organized religions came from the Sramana culture. In fact, in Buddhist literature, you don't find what we today call Hindu gods and goddesses. None of their names are there. You have only village goddesses are referred to here and there. Occasionally we refer to village goddesses. Nobody else, nothing else. There is no Shiva, there is no Vishnu, there is no, all these things are not there. Which clearly shows it was a different culture altogether. The Sramana culture has no concept of God. They believed a man can raise himself spiritually by his own effort. And the concept of consciousness going from one life to another, whether it is Tirthankara concept in Jain, among Jains, or the Buddha's concept in the Buddhists, that is consciousness going from one life to another. This was also there in the Sramana culture, which was not there in the Vedic culture. Vedic culture, everything ended with death. And then you should think of Swargam or Narakam, heaven or hell, depending on the kind of life you have led. And the Swargam or Narakam was available only to men, not for women. Whereas the concept of mukti, the concept of repeated births, concept of evolution, that was there in the Sramana culture. So, to begin with, we should understand even according to the latest, what do you call evolutionary? I'm sorry, 1 minute. Evolutionary biology, 50,000 years or 65,000 years people were there in this country. What is it? What were their beliefs? What kind of life they led? What was their culture like? It is still not well researched and established. There is a very good book called Early Indians by Tony Joseph. Is now available. These early Indians clearly discusses, this book is based on the research work of almost some 72 scientists all over the world. And these inferences in this book are based on the genetic dispersal of genes. The earliest, these words called the out of Africa theory. People came out of Africa, then came to West Asia, and from West Asia to along the west coast of India and then east coast of India, they went to what is now called Indonesia, and from there to Australia. The whole thing is traced. The way man moved about, came out of Africa and then moved into our country. And then the route by which, these people went to Australia, this is also listed in that book. This is a very interesting book. Everyone, I think those who are interested in this should read this. Also, Joseph's talks are available on the internet. You can also watch that. This clearly shows the earlier cultures we are not aware of. For example, even the Indus Valley culture, we do not fully know what exactly it was like. Except that, we only know that it's a non-Aryan, pre-Aryan culture. But we do not exactly know because the script is still to be deciphered. But according to the recent, Rocky Ghat, where they found a dead body somewhere in Haryana from Indus Valley culture, when the genes were analyzed, it was found there is closeness, this genetic affinity between these Indus Valley people and the people of South India, particularly a community called Irulas, whom we call Erukulas in Andhra. So their genetic thing is very close to that. That shows pre-Aryan, non-Aryan cultures that were there in this country. We are not properly aware of it. It's mainly because we used to think, Sanskrit is the be-all and the end-all of this culture. And nobody ever, devoted any attention to Prakrit languages. You take our own culture in Telugu, from 2nd century AD to 11th century AD, there is no book available. The entire literature was either destroyed or not preserved. And what language they were written, we do not know. In Tamil Nadu, they managed to preserve at least 2 or 3 books. We don't have anything here. That's because of our obsession with Sanskrit and, thinking that Sanskrit is the mother of all Indian languages, which it is not. There are as many as 64 non-Sanskritic languages in this country. We have not devoted any attention to this kind of work. With the result, our history remains, later history remains fragmented and partial. Coming back to our theme, Jainism and Buddhism are the 2 first organized religions in this country. First is Jainism, followed by Buddhism. These are the 2 organized religions, and they both belong to this Ramana culture. They both have no concept of God. For them, for both, man is the center. They are called homocentric religions, man-centered religions. They believe that, a man can, by his own effort, elevate himself. By his own foolishness, he can degrade himself. These 2 religions, they belong to this Ramana culture, though they differ very. In fact, they were rivals in early when they started. Between the 2, Jainism is 250 years older because the 23rd Tirthankara, Parsvanatha, lived 250 years earlier than the Buddha. Buddha and Mahavira were contemporaries. And Buddhist Vinaya, the monastic discipline, a large part of it is on refining the monastic discipline of Jainism. The dress code, although, for example, Digambara tradition was there among Jains, Buddha stopped all these practices. It's an improvement on an earlier culture. So these two religions which are there now, they're still surviving in this Jainism and Buddhism. They belong to this Ramana culture. It is they which had this concept of mukti or liberation, personal salvation, then man-centeredness, concern with the way you live in this world, totally unconcerned with what is all these supernatural forces like God or devil or whatever it is. These are totally radically different from the later Indian culture. In course of time, elements of Jainism, elements of Buddhism, elements of Shaktayam, the Shakti cult, then sacrificial religion, which came with Central Asian people called Aryans. And then the folk religion, and the Grama Devatas, which we call Grama Devatas in our culture. All these things found place, they came together, and what we are now calling Hinduism is a mix of all these things. It has elements of all these cultures. But then, in our ignorance, people think, these things have, other religions are influenced by Hinduism. No, it is Hinduism which borrowed, it is a syncretic religion. It went on borrowing from whatever it could borrow from. And then there is a mix of all these things. You have the doctrine of karma is essentially a Brahmanic culture. It is in the Jainism and then Buddhism also. But that was borrowed and it was been adopted to their own requirements. Again, doctrine of Punarbhavam, that is Chittadhara as we call it in Buddhism, consciousness going from one life to another. It was turned into Punarjanma in the later religion called Hinduism. All these ideas came from there and they were adopted according to the requirements of the times and then the priestly classes. And then they underwent radical change. At times when we can't even recognize that they came originally from some other culture. So this is something which we should understand, that Buddhism is not a Protestant religion as many of our scholars told us, including Dr. Radhakrishnan and Ananda Kumar Swami. They tried to tell us, even P.V. Kane, the great Mahamahopadhyaya P.V. Kane, great scholar, considered great scholar, he also said it's a Protestant religion, they protested against but it is derived from Vedic culture, but it's a kind of protest. It is not a Protestant religion. It is a pre-Vedic, non-Vedic culture called Sramana culture. It has nothing to do with the sacrificial religion called Vedic religion. This is the first point we should clearly understand about Buddhism. Second thing is, some people say it is part of Upanishadic thought. Actually, it is contemporaneous with Upanishads in the sense, most of the Upanishads, according to modern day research, they were composed after the Buddha and before Ashoka. In those 200, at least the major Upanishads, the 10 major Upanishads, they were composed under the impact of Sramana culture. These Upanishads came into being. That is the theory. Now it is not any longer accepted that Upanishads are the end of the Vedas. No, it is the negation of the Vedas. Vedantam unte Vedalani antamundinchindi Vedantam. It is not the end of the Vedas. The end of the Vedas is nothing. So it is radically different from the Vedic thought. The sacrificial religion is totally different from Upanishadic thought. This Upanishadic thought itself was greatly influenced by Sramanic tradition. This is the latest, many scholars think, and they have written about it. There's a book called Discerning the Buddha by Lalmani Joshi. Also, there's another small book called Hinduism, Brahmanism, and Buddhism. That's also by Lalmani Joshi. In all that, people say that Upanishadic thought and Buddhist thought are contemporaneous, but they're radically different. For example, in Upanishads, the whole obsession is with Atma and Paramatma. Buddhism does not have either Atma, they don't recognize Atma. What they recognize is the mind. And they have no concept of Paramatma. They only know the concept they have is Nirvana, the highest thing. There's nothing like merger with Atma, merging with Paramatma. All those things are not there in Buddhism. So that way it is totally different from the rest of the Upanishads also. For us, the important thing is for 1000 years, Buddhism and Jainism were the founding culture of the Telugu land. Andhra, Telangana, Rayalaseema, whatever it is. Our culture was influenced totally by Buddhism. What it was, our culture started with Buddhism, Jainism, and of course our village goddesses and our folk religion, as I call them. Telugu script itself was contrived by Jains. First, it had only 34 letters, and 22 were later borrowed from Sanskrit, and then we made it 56. Even Sumati Satakam, the Badhyana, who composed Sumati Satakam from Nalgonda district, he was a Jain. Later, the first stanza was inserted in that, and then it was made to appear as though it is not a Jain text. Sri Ramani Daityadri, nothing to do with Sri Rama. So, all the Niti Satakas, whether it is Sumati Satakam or the Bhartrihari was a Buddhist. Niti Satakams, essentially which deal with man and his conduct. They were all either Buddhist or Jain works. So what I'm trying to say is, I know for all of us, Sumati Satakam was compulsory, isn't it? In our younger days, we were made to recite all those 100, commit them to memory. So it is our founding, our culture was essentially shaped by Jainism and Buddhism, particularly Buddhism. Jain influence is much less, because some people say our Vaishyas in Andhra, though they call themselves Vaishyas, they're really not Vaishyas. They're Komatis. Komati means they were worshippers of Gomateswara. That is how the name Komati came. So it shows our culture was essentially influenced by Jainism and Buddhism. That was our foundation culture. Earliest, you see, another reason why we can easily see that also. All our holy places are built either on Jain or Buddhist sites. In Andhra, Pancharamas are all 5 aramas of Buddhists. There are now Shiva temples are built. Because after Jainism and Buddhism came Shaivism, then came Vaishnavism. So they're all built on. So some time ago, I was speaking at a meeting in which I said, all the holy places, all our holy places in Andhra are older than the gods who are now occupying them. For example, Sri Salem or Tirupati. Many people believe it was a Bodhisattva, it's a Buddhist place. And then a Jain place, because we call Venkateswara Balaji. Balasri is a Jain goddess. Presiding deity of Varangal is Padmachi, who is a Jain goddess. And then our people say our Brahmaramba temple, what temple is there? That was also a Jain temple. For simple reason, not Brahmaramba, this is that famous temple in Varangal. Bhadrakali temple faces west. No Hindu, so-called Hindu temples face west. This, they say, was a Jain temple. So the entire culture of Varangal was entirely Jain's culture to start with. And later these people, Kakatiyas, they themselves became Shaivites. They themselves converted these Jain places into Shaivite places. They also say the earlier Karanams in the villages were all Jains. When they became Shaivites, they removed all Jains and brought in this community called Arvial and Yogulu and made them Karanams. These are all interesting facts of history, which most of us, do not care to know. Our culture, the basis of our culture is Jain and Buddhism. It is, and of course, our village gods and goddesses, the Gangamma or whatever, typical village goddesses. This is something which we should very clearly understand about Buddhism. It is not a Protestant religion. It belonged to an independent stream called Shamanic culture. And then, it is pre-Vedic and non-Vedic. That is why it didn't suffer from the kind of, the kind of problems we had in the later religion. Interestingly, though our Telugu is 1,000 years old, Buddhist literature is not available. It was not translated. The original Pali texts, there were 52 volumes Pali texts. They were written down for the first time in 1st century BC in Sri Lanka. These 52 volumes, none of them were translated into Telugu. Or if they were translated, they must have been destroyed. We find for the first time in Mahabodhi, we have taken up this job of translating Adi Bauddham or Moola Bauddham, the old school of Buddhism, into Telugu. This Tripitaka Grandhamala work is now going on. Out of these 52 volumes, we have completed almost 25 volumes. Another 27 volumes are still to be translated. It's an ongoing project. So having said this, that our culture, base of our culture is Jainism and Buddhism. You take whether it is our temple in Kolanapata, or many temples around Hyderabad, they're old Jain temples. Even Patancheru, the other day excavation took place around in Patancheru. A lot of Jain statues were thrown up. And of course, they put some naam on that. Now they call it Shiva or Vishnu or whatever suits them. So this part of history, in fact, I brought it to the notice of our Deccan Historical Society also. When Dr. Bava was taking care of that, I told him, you seem to think that history in Hyderabad started with the Qutub Shahis and ended with Asad Jahis. Sir, it is not correct. Please think of pre-Qutub Shahi, in the ancient history of Deccan. A lot of Jain sites and Buddhist sites in Deccan. Nobody seemed to have devoted any attention to it. Then he brought a volume on Buddhism. Unfortunately, they couldn't pursue it later. Otherwise, he was interested in doing it. But one volume on Buddhism, he brought it in Deccan, Buddhism in Deccan. Entire area, whether it is Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Deccan area, it is full of Buddhist sites. All major sites are in this area. So we should understand this thing first, that Buddhism is totally different from what we were pushing. Today, many people say, what is new about Buddhism? Many of these ideas are there in Bhagavad Gita or some other text they say. But what they don't understand is Bhagavad Gita came 1,000 years after Buddhism. Ideas from Buddhism can go into Bhagavad Gita, but the Bhagavad Gita ideas cannot go into Buddhism. So we are getting our chronology wrong. We should understand this chronology clearly first. And then we realize, that how our understanding is defective. Now, this is the first part. Second part is, now why, more important part is, why do we need Buddhism now? Many people ask me also. It's part of our history, it's part of our culture, it's okay. But how is it you are interested in Buddhism at this point of time? Does it really help in any way? Well, I would like to quote some very eminent Indians what they thought about Buddhism briefly. Swami Vivekananda, what he said, Buddha is an ideal karma yogi, acting entirely without motive. And the history of humanity shows him to have been the greatest man ever born. Beyond compare, the greatest combination of head and heart that ever existed. This is what Swami Vivekananda said. Many Bengali Buddhists believe, rightly or wrongly, many Bengali Buddhists believe if Vivekananda lived a little longer, he would have perhaps become a Buddhist. That's what many of them believe. Then what did Mahatma Gandhi say? If ever there was any teacher in the world who insisted on the inexorable law of cause and effect, it is Gautama. And one of the first books he read was that famous work, what is that? While he was still a student in England, Zen Buddhism. Then Blavatsky, founder of Theosophical Society, she said, while in it's very important this observation. While in other religions, ritual and dogma, they hold the most important place. In Buddhism, it is the ethics which have always been the most insisted upon. In our traditional religion, it's karma kanda all the time. పాపం చేయొద్దని ఎవరు చెప్పరు, చేస్తే పరిహారం ఏమిటి చెప్తారు అంటారు. ఇక్కడ రిచువల్ కాదు, ది ఎథిక్స్ ఈస్ ది మోస్ట్ ఇంపార్టెంట్ పార్ట్ ఇన్ బుద్ధిజం. And Albert Einstein, he said, if there is any religion that would cope with modern scientific needs, it would be Buddhism. Einstein, this is what Einstein, the greatest scientist of 20th century. He said, if there is any religion that would cope with modern scientific needs, it would be Buddhism. And what did Jawaharlal Nehru say? The path that the Buddha showed us, I believe, is the only path humanity must tread if it is to escape disaster. And what did Gulzar Apparao say? ఏనాడైతే మనం ఈ దేశాన్ని నుంచి బౌద్ధాన్ని పంపినామే ఆనాడే మనం ఆత్మహత్య చేసుకున్నాం అన్నాడు. అంతకంటే మోర్ ఎఫెక్టివ్ స్టేట్మెంట్ ఇంకోటి లేదు. So all these people, why did they say about these things about Buddhism? There was tremendous interest at one point of time in Buddhism. Everybody was all over the world became interested in Buddhism, and they started translating Buddhist texts into Pali Text Society was established in Sri Lanka. Translations took place, and then today there is so much of literature on Buddhism. I don't think any other religion can come anywhere near. Each country has its own literature on Buddhism. Now, with this background still, Baba Saheb has also taken up Buddhism for what? He thought of Prabuddha Bharat, India, where Buddhism will be the culture. He thought that is the only way this country can survive, the only way this society can survive. He was persuaded by Christians, persuaded by Muslims, persuaded by everybody to join the religion, but he didn't. Why? He studied the whole thing. He found Buddhism is the most suitable culture for this country, and it should be the endeavor of everybody to bring in that culture back into our lives. Then only this country can survive and prosper. So, with this background and with so many of our modern day leaders and thinkers, thinking about Buddhism, but still we have not made any big headway in bringing Buddhism back. For me, I always say, one reason why we should all think of Buddhism, we should all think of bringing Buddhism back is, for 3,000 years we have been a civilization now. 3,000 or more, if you go take Indus Valley also, it's 5,000 years. But it has remained an unintegrated society, driven into castes and communities and this kind of thing. Why is it unintegrated society? Is there any other country in the world? There are 200 countries in the world. Is there any other country in the world where society is not integrated? It is still fragmented. In our country, it is still fragmented. Why? According to my understanding, I may be wrong, but I think I am right. This Varnasrama Dharma, they call it Varnasrama. They call it Varnasrama Dharma. I call it Varnasrama Adharma. Because of this Varnasrama Adharma, the society has not been integrated. That itself is the source of all stress and strain today. When fighting on the lines of communities, they had 4 Varnas those days. Now government has created another 4 Varnas now. OC, BC, SC, ST. These are in the modern Varnasrama Adharma. Unnecessarily, they have divided people into these communities. With the result, it remains an unintegrated society even now, 75 years after independence. Why? Because we are still continuing in the old culture. As long as some people say we should reform it, then give it up. Well, many people have tried to reform it. Basava tried to reform it, Buddha tried to reform it. First person to attempt to reform was Buddha. He refused to recognize caste. Then Basava, then Ramanuja, then so many people, Mahatma Phule, Periyar Ramaswamy Naikar, Babasaheb Ambedkar, all these people, everybody tried to, but did anybody succeed in reforming the Hindu society? They have not, because the very ethos of the society as it is today is divisive. It doesn't make for any integrated society. The only way we can bring out an integrated society is to take to Buddhism, heart and soul, in all seriousness. And for 1,000 years, this kind of tensions were not there. 1,000 Buddhism was there. This kind of problems were there. Even according to genetic theory also, from 1st century BC, or about that time, after that, this intermixing of castes stopped taking place. This kind of, people evolving in different communities started after the 1st century BC. Till then, it was not the case. So in the early years of Buddhism, this was not an important thing. Caste was not an important thing. But then later, it became important and it was sanctified. It was given religious sanction. And in Bhagavad Gita itself is very clearly said, Chaturvanna Maya Srashtam. With the result, it remains an unintegrated society. If you want to really integrate it and bring about, the radical transformation, according to me and my understanding, Buddhism is the only solution. Then, second reason why we should adopt Buddhism, we should take interest in Buddhism and take to it in a big way, is homocentric religion. It's man-centered religion. All other religions you find except Buddhism and Jainism were man-centered. All other religions are God-centered. These are the only two religions in our country which are concerned with man, how he should live his life, how he should improve himself, how he should become a better version of himself. And these are the only two religions with an ethical base. There the base is ritual. ఆ వ్రతము ఈ వ్రతం ఇప్పుడు యజ్ఞాలు కూడా వచ్చినాయి ఇప్పుడు now all kinds of new yajnas are now things which were given up long ago. Again they have made a comeback. Whereas base in Buddhism and Jainism, particularly Buddhism, is ethics. Today we don't tell the children what is right and what is not right. On the other hand, we tell them stories which justifies wrong things. నీకు శుక్రనీతిలో శుక్రుడు చెప్తాడు కదా, బలి was a Jain ruler. Bali says, I have given word to Vishnu, them I can't go back. And Shukra says, nothing wrong, you can always go back. Varija Chulandu Vaivahikamulandu Chittamana Vitta Bhangamandu Bonkavachu Adi Tappavachu. This kind of wrong values are inculcating among the children. The story of Bali. And the man who gives dana is pushed into the netherworld. And the man who accepts dana pushes him into the netherworld. And he becomes God, and the man who gives dana is now made a demon. The story of Parsurama, who kills his mother at the instance of his father's suspicion. These are all creating some kind of confusion among the younger generation, not realizing what is right and what is not right. They're not able to judge for themselves what is right and what is not right. Because in religion, they're not very clearly, whereas in Buddhism, Panchasila very clearly lays down what a layman, a householder should follow. What are the 5 principles? That kind of thing is not there in our tradition. I am not being critical. I am just my observation. You think about it for yourself. This kind of confusion, mixed values, all kinds of stories which do not really promote virtue. On the other hand, it justifies non-virtue. We should be very careful about adopting these things into our school syllabus also. You call somebody a Dharma Raja and make him lie. That means, our ordinary people think, yes, when the occasion demands, we can also lie, but you're wrong. This kind of ideas get into the minds of people. We should correct all these things. Only religion that can correct, only Dharma that can correct is Buddhism. Yeah, the traditional Indian religion, all kinds of things, you have everything for everybody. And it's very, very difficult, to reform it. Many people have tried and given it up. Then there is an interesting conversation between Mahatma Gandhi and Dhammananda Kosambi, the Buddhist monk who was living with him in Varda. In the morning walks, they used to walk together. Mahatma Gandhi used to hold Dhammananda Kosambi. D.D. Goswami's father was a Buddhist monk in great esteem. Dhammananda Kosambi told him, please don't talk too much about Bhagavad Gita. It's a book of violence, he said. Mahatma Gandhi was surprised. He said, why do you say that? He says, here is Arjuna. He says, for the sake of these 5 villages, why should I kill my gurus, my teachers, my cousins, my relations? That was a moment of enlightenment for him. And here is the teacher who says, no, you are not killing, nor is it dying. Everything is being done by me. You are Kshatriya, it's your duty to kill. Dharmananda Goswami told Mahatma, this is the thing, it's not proper. Don't let us not too much talk about this. And of course, Mahatma Gandhi said, no, that's not my understanding of Gita. But whatever it is, Goswami also didn't want to hurt him. He said, yeah, because you are talking about ahimsa, I am bringing this to your notice. And they left it at that. What I am saying is this kind of things that in certain situations you can kill, certain situations you can do wrong things, in certain situations you can justify wrong things. This is creating confusion among our children. How to set it right? We have to think about it. I mean, I don't expect you to agree with me entirely, but you think about it, you come to your own conclusions. Third reason why I think we should change over to Buddhist culture is the radical analytical way in which he approaches human problems. First, identify what the problem is. What is its origin? How can we overcome it? A scientific analytical way, rather than whenever you are in a situation where you cannot do a thing, you go and helplessly you take a vow and then say, I'll go to Sri Salem or I go to Tirupati, I come and give you, do this, do that, that can. No, here instead you are forced to think. Buddha asks you to think. What is the origin of the problem? Dukkha, yes, there is dukkha. Amudaya, it is arising. And what is the solution? You are asked to think about it. Think for yourself. It makes man self-reliant than becoming dependent on your supernatural forces. The 3 pillars of Buddhism are Sila, Samadhi, and Prajna. Sila is the moral life which a practitioner has to adopt. Panchasila for householders, Astasila for homeless people, Anagarikas, Dasasila for trainee monks, and for the regular monk, there are some 223 rules. So the Sila becomes the basis for Buddhist way of life. So for householders, it is Panchasila. And then Samadhi is a process of rigorous self-observation and purification, a self-cleansing process. You have Vipassana centers now. If some of you have not done this Vipassana, please go and do a 10-day course. You will understand why we should become Buddhists. Vipassana holds a mirror. It helps you to hold a mirror for yourself. You can see your warts. You can see your, what is wrong with you. You can see what is right and what is wrong with you. It helps you to look at yourself. That is the Buddhist meditation is free. Now meditation has become big business. People are making money in the name of meditation, teaching meditation. Buddhists believe if we make any money in teaching meditation, then it is no meditation. Everything is free. So most important thing is it forces you to look at yourself. Vipassana forces you to look at yourself. It forces you to hold a mirror to yourself. You yourself realize what is wrong with me, what is wrong, why I am doing this. In fact, my first experience, some 20, 30 years ago, I went for this Vipassana course. My first experience, my first feeling was, why did I not do it earlier? I would have been a much better person if I did it earlier. That is the kind of impact it has on you. And all these things, number one, Vipassana demystifies meditation. From childhood, we are told meditation, tapas chesaru, ad chesaru, dhyanam chesaru, who nobody knows what it is. It demystifies meditation. It helps you to look at yourself. Very practical way of improving yourself, to become a better version of yourself psychologically. And I feel, children in several states now, they have introduced it in the school curriculum. In Telangana and Andhra, they wait to do it. If people learn to look at themselves, then they realize what is wrong with them. If you don't look at yourself at all, then there is no way of improving. Then self-reliance. Buddhism promotes self-reliance. Whereas in our traditional religion, it promotes always dependence on supernatural forces. Something goes wrong, you take a vow, you go to Tirupati, you do this, you go to some other temple. No, here it is not the case. You are responsible for your own actions. Nobody else can, no religious man, no God can help you. Dhammapada, the crucial statement is, by oneself alone is evil done. By oneself is one defiled. By oneself is evil avoided. By oneself alone is one purified. Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. There is no use going to this Swami, that Swami, he is not going to help you. You have to purify yourself by your own conduct. This is the message of Buddhism. And that is very badly needed in our culture today. Any human problems are very rationally analyzed in Buddhism. They try to understand the problem. They try to understand its origin, try to understand its, how to overcome. This kind of analysis, scientific approach is promoted in Buddhism, which is very important. In this context, I would like to bring to your notice is the Mysore University centenary celebrations in Nobel Prize winner Venkataraman Ramakrishnan, the Nobel Prize winner. He came. He made a speech at Mysore on the occasion of the centenary, which he said, India needs to be more rational and less superstitious as a society. Countries like China, Japan, Korea, and Singapore believe in modern methods based on rational beliefs. Here in India, ISRO chairman visits Tirupati or Kalahasti to seek blessings of gods, before he launches that satellite. This is what Venkatraman said. So this kind of reliance on supernatural forces, reliance on something you do not see, and instead of taking care to see that everything is done properly, you rely on supernatural forces, rely on God, or rely on some ratam or some yagnam or something, and then you think everything will be all right. This attitude, he says, is holding back India. Now, of late, our latest tradition, at least in Telangana culture, is yagnas. All kinds of yagnas are now Chandi yagna, this yagna, that yagna, all kinds of yagnas are taking place. And then if you go back into our history also, As long as Buddhism was there, Buddhist influence was there, scientific discoveries, all those things, the Aryabhatta or whatever it is, when that after 5th century AD, the whole scientific temperament was very much there. Later, there is a tremendous change. People were interested in astronomy in a big way. After 5th century AD, astrology started gaining ground. Astronomy has been turned into astrology. And astrology, what kind of impact it had on Indian society. The 1761 Battle of Panipat, we lost only because of astrology. The Marathas, the Sadasiva Rao Baba was the general. He was a great believer in astrology. He took astrologers along with him to this battle. And after reaching there, they told him, Modam has come in. Now 40 days you cannot launch the battle. There were already 1,000 elephants, 20,000 cavalry, nearly 70 or 80,000 people. For 40 days, you can't launch the battle because there's no good auspicious movement. Whereas the Ahmad Shah Durrani, Abdali or Durrani, he came with 12,000, 6,000, he had time to get some more forces. In all, there were only 12,000 cavalrymen there. These people for 40 days there without food, without proper nourishment, most of them were sick, they were weak. By the time the battle started, they didn't have enough food also to eat. It's not easy to maintain so many animals and so many people there on meager finances those days. And finally, when the battle was launched, it was over in 2 days and more than 50, 60,000 people were killed. The historian says there was not a single home in Maharashtra, Marathwada, where a brother or a father was not killed. So many people were killed. It's all because of this auspicious day and then postponing the battle for 40 days. This kind of things is holding back our country. So unless we change, Jawaharlal Nehru started saying we should develop scientific temperament. As long as he was there, it was pursued very vigorously. But after that, again, it was given up. Now we have Vastu in a beautiful place like Hyderabad, where have undulating terrain, hills and valleys and all that. And the Vastu fellows come and tell you, where there is a hill, you need to have a you should not have that hill there. You have to flatten it. Where there is a valley, you should have a hill. You don't go by geology to put a bore well. You go by some Vastu, this thing, and then you put it on so and so corner where you don't get water. So all these problems are arising because of our irrational beliefs, which is somehow acquired, has become part of our culture and our religion. How to get rid of this? The only way, according to me, is a Buddhist temperament, Buddhist culture should develop. That is in accordance with the scientific development. Dalai Lama made a very interesting statement some time ago. He said, if any part of Buddhism is found to be inconsistent with science, he said he would disown it. Because that kind of spiritual freedom was given to followers of Buddhism by the Buddha himself. He said, no, you should not even believe what I say. Whatever I say, you test it on your own life's experience. Like a goldsmith tests gold on a touchstone. And if it is useful for yourself and for others, then only accept it. Otherwise, don't accept. This is what Buddha said. You don't even believe what I say. This is Kalama Sutra, famous Kalama Sutra in Buddhism. That kind of spiritual freedom is there in Buddhism. Whereas here, if you don't have your window here, your son will have a problem. If you don't have a door there, your wife will suffer a problem. This kind of myths are promoted and people are making livelihoods out of it. This is what Buddha called wrong livelihood. You promote superstitions and make a living. It is mislead people. It's wrong livelihood. Even our Vemana, we also condemned it in very clear terms. Viprulela jeri viri kutala gusi munu muhurta munsa mundetla mosira. These are all there, already there. But somehow we lost track of them. But we never respected them. We continued in our old ways. And still, these things are holding back our progress. This is a famous statement by Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell wrote a book called Why I Am Not a Christian. In that he says, man is yet to secure freedom of conscience. In most religions, frozen in time as they are, they seek to hold man in their thrall, negating in a way man's intellectual advancement. Man's intellectual advancement is not recognized by religion. Buddhism seeks to, this is not what Russell, that's what he said. He said, my argument against religion is, it is discounting man's intellectual advancement. It is still putting the old ideas on the high pedestal and they expect you to follow it. But Buddhism, it is not like that. Buddhism seeks to set man free and encourages him to accept and encourages him not to accept unless it is tested and found to be beneficial to oneself and for all others. If anything is beneficial to you and to all others, then only accept it. Otherwise, don't accept it. His Buddha himself said that in Kalama Sutra. As the wise test gold by turning, cutting, and rubbing on a touchstone. This touchstone is your life's experience. So you test my teaching on your life's experience. If it is useful to you and to others, then only you accept it. Otherwise, you don't accept it. Buddhism also says, it's against fundamentalism. Buddha compared dharma to a raft. A raft is useful only to cross the river. Once you cross the river, you should abandon it. You should not carry it on your head. After the river is crossed, the raft becomes a burden and is best left behind. If this analogy is understood and appreciated by all religious bigotry would come to an end. Now the world needs these ideas more than anything else. See, what's the point in carrying the religion all the time into the streets, you disturb people like me early in the morning by your amplified music. Your religion need not be in the streets. It should be with you, in your heart. And then, you should not become a nuisance to others. It should be good for you and good for others. Then somebody, I think, referred to this Buddhist Sangha. Buddhist Sanghas are built on the Republican culture of ancient India. We only think of Greek republics. This Republican culture was there very much in ancient India, in the Buddhist republics. And Buddhist Sangha till today, even now it follows these principles. As he rightly said, James Prashant, he referred to it. He rightly said, even today, every decision is taken by consensus. If they can't agree on a point, they postpone it. They debate it further. And decision is taken on the basis of consensus. So that kind of Republican culture is there. You are now going to have, now 75 years of freedom and, constitution, is read out the preamble. We want to really live up to it. These ideas are important. Buddhist ideas, the way, Sangha administers itself, they're very important. There is nothing like head of a monastery in Buddhism. The entire monastery is run by the Sangha, a group of people, and they debate all these issues once or twice in a month. And if they don't agree on that, they postpone it. They again come back to it at a later date, till they go on debating it, till they arrive at some kind of middle way, some kind of consensus. Middle way is another great thing. It can be applied even in our politics. For example, Dalai Lama is now advocating autonomous Tibet. Why? There are two extreme views about Tibet. One is Tibet should be an independent country. That is the view of Tibetans. The Chinese thing is, it is part of China. You cannot, it was always part of China, which of course it was not, but still they claim. These are two extreme views. So Dalai Lama attempted what is called the middle way solution. Middle way solution is, yes, we will be part of China. We need cultural autonomy. We need autonomous Tibet within China. This is a middle way solution. You see how they are applying Buddhist principles to the everyday problems. We should be able to do the same thing. Now, instead of abusing each other on TV and in newspapers, we should be able to find middle way solutions to many of the problems. But the greatest contribution of Buddhism, according to me, is this middle way. It discounts extremism. It doesn't allow any extreme view. Always it tries to find some solution between two extreme views. Then ours is an unequal society, totally. Even today, untouchability has been abolished and so many things, but still an unequal society. Equality is the core of Buddhism. Right from the beginning, it never distinguished between one human being as superior birth and another one as something else. No. On the other hand, when the Sakyans became Buddhists, Buddha first ordained Upali, the Sakyan barber, their barber. He ordained him first as monk and later the Sakyan princess. The idea is once he is attained as a monk, he becomes senior. Every prince has to pay obeisance to him. Then he wanted them to realize that, their ego should go first. That's why he made Upali the senior monk and others were later, other Sakyan Kshatriyas, they were made monks. So that, Upali remained senior to them. He was the first one to condemn this casteism. He said, "Oh, Bhuktus, these four castes, the Kshatriyas, Brahmins, Vaisyas, and Sudras, when they have gone forth from the world under the doctrine and the discipline proclaimed by Tathagatas, they renounce their names and lineage and they enter into the number of Sakyaputra Samanas. All are equal. Once you become a Buddhist, everybody is equal. It doesn't require a lot to abolish untouchability. It doesn't require a lot to bring about equality. This Buddhism has no room for compulsion or coercion. An individual by his own volition becomes a Buddhist by seeking refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. There is nothing like conversion. You go to a Buddha Vihara, you take a refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you become a Buddhist. It is he who undertakes to live an ethical life. Nobody tells you. They won't tell you, you don't do this, you don't do this. You go and you make a, when you become a Buddhist, you say, I won't do this, I won't do that, I won't do this. You voluntarily undertake to live an ethical life. No one forces it on you. Voluntary compliance that makes for strong commitment to Dhamma. There is no greater freedom of conscience achieved by any developed democracy or any religious tradition even today. Now, there is a problem with our constitution also. Our constitution says you have a right to, practice your religion, profess, practice, and propagate. The problem arises with propagation only. You profess and practice. Why do you want to propagate your religion in a secular country? You don't have to propagate your religion. If I want to become a Christian or I want to become a Muslim, I'll go and become that. Why should you propagate it? Why should you allow these meetings to be held on the streets of towns and cities? Buddhism, there is nothing like that. You are yourself taking it, in the Panchashila, you say, I don't kill, I don't do this, I don't do that. Nobody tells you not to do this, not to do that. This kind of propagation also is not advocated in Buddhism. In fact, it's time we amend our constitution to remove that clause, propagating religion. Why should anybody propagate his religion? You profess, you practice, we have no problem. Why should you propagate it and rub it on others? And then Buddhism and personality cult. Now, personality cult, Baba Sahib also said this country has one weakness, that they adore people. There's a personality cult. So even constitution can be subverted by personality cult. It happened once when Mrs. Gandhi was there. Somebody said India is Indira, Indira is India. And that was the beginning of that emergency. This kind of personality cults is discounted totally in Buddhism. And somebody said, I have come to see you. Buddha said, if you see Dhamma, you see me. You see me, you see the Dhamma. I am nothing more than that. These ideas to some extent were implemented by Ashoka during his time. In his inscriptions, there are words like Vacho Gupti. Vacho Gupti is not unduly praising one's own faith and speaking ill of others. This is Vacho Gupti. Then Bahusruta, listening to and learning about each other's faiths. Samavaya, supporting each other and living in amity. These are all part of Ashokan inscriptions. Ashoka tried to implement some of these things. And I think to a large extent he succeeded during his time. And that was what was called Dhamma Vijaya. That was on the Vijayadashmi day. We believe Buddhists, we believe Dhamma Vijaya was turned into Vijayadashmi and a story attributed to it. Actually, that is the day on which Ashoka became a Buddhist. That is also the day on which Baba Sahib became a Buddhist. That's why the Baba Sahib chose that day to become a Buddhist. So this is, similarly, there is a book called Ratnavali. This is these two books, Sukrulekha and Ratnavali, they are Nagarjuna's famous works. They became extinct in our country. Later they were found in Tibet and then they were retranslated back into Sanskrit. And this Ratnavali is in total contrast to our Chanukya's, Kautilya's book. I read out a few things, you can understand the spirit of Buddhism in action. O king, he is advice to the king. His advice to the king. Ratnavali is the book in which Nagarjuna advises the king. O king, if crops fail for any reason, help the farmer with free grain. Not only for his sustenance, but for the seed of the next year, next season. Waive all the taxes of the previous year and reduce them in the years to come. Is there in the Ratnavali? It's a book from Andhra Pradesh. I mean, your Nagarjuna Konda. And we do not know anything about it. In all seasonal harvests, your share of the produce shall be reckoned after providing for bhikkhus, mendicants, and other dependents. See, the rulers used to take 1/4 of the crop as the tax. So he said, before taking the tax, first, what is meant for bhikkhus, what is meant for others, you remove that, and then rest of among the out of the other thing only you take 1/4. And compassion for convicts. The book says, Ratnavali says, even murderers and heinous criminals deserve your sympathy and kindness. These fallen people deserve it more than others. A generous king shall take particular care of them. Most people in jail can be set free. Most people in jail can be set free after a few days or weeks. No one deserves to be forever there. If for some reason one is held for long, look after him with food, shelter, and clothing, medicaments, if he is not well. Also, make available barber's services. As a father who would care for a wayward son, hoping he would someday be better, you should punish people with all kindness and without any ill will or contempt. This is from Ratnavali, Nagarjuna's Ratnavali, advice to the king. Our welfare states can take a lesson from this. Finally, he gives one parting advice to the king. If you cannot rule your kingdom like this, with all kindness and all, you become a bhikkhu like us. You let somebody else rule, and you become a bhikkhu, join us. This is the Buddhist ideal, more enlightened than the best of democracies have achieved. Unless we draw upon these spiritual resources to correct the distortions in contemporary society, our appreciation of Buddhism would only be intellectual. The need of the times is more than mere intellectual involvement. Many reformers down the ages have been influenced by the wisdom and compassion found in Buddhism. In a spirit of sacrifice, it's a spirit of sacrifice led His Holiness the Dalai Lama to voluntarily give up his temporal power to the elected representatives of Tibetan expatriates. The King of Bhutan gave up absolute powers and compelled people to take to democracy. See, all these things, they're very important. Baba Sahib took to Buddhism to give life of dignity and a new voice to the vast numbers of people marginalized earlier for ages. While the theme of democracy is of great importance, what is equally important is Buddhist economics. Buddhist economics, there's a book called Small is Beautiful, almost 50 years old book by the well-known economist Shoemaker. About 40 years ago, another thinkers followed him. In these days of sustainable environment and sustainable development, Buddhist concepts are not merely relevant, but urgently needed. So these ideas of Buddhism can be taken into statecraft, into economics, into our education, into our daily life. If we do all that, we'll be a much better society. Otherwise, we'll go on like this only, as an unintegrated society with inequalities and with what they call Sila Prata Paramarsha, we say in Buddhism, that is with all our meaningless rituals, without any rational thinking, without any freedom of conscience. With all these superstitions, so if we have to get rid of all of them, we have to bring in the spirit of Buddhism. How do we bring in? I mean, it doesn't require, there are many people who are not Buddhists, but they follow Buddhism more earnestly than many so-called born Buddhists. They call it Prachanna Buddha, the anonymous Buddhist center. So how do we bring in these ideas into our day-to-day life is the challenge. I personally feel, well, if you want to be Hindus, by culture you can be. By religion, you have to be a Buddhist, because that is the only sensible religion today, a man-centered religion. One man-centered religion, that is the only way we can progress. Otherwise, you will be stuck, as you are already stuck in this deep morass. Thank you.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్, థ్యాంక్ యూ. శ్రీ ఆంజనేయ రెడ్డి గారు సుమారుగా 1:10 నిమిషాల సమయం పాటు ఈ దేశంలో బుద్ధిజం మనకు ఎందుకు అవసరం అనేటువంటి అంశం మీద లోతైనటువంటి విశ్లేషణ చేశారు. ప్రధానంగా ఈ భూమి అనేటువంటిది సుమారుగా 60,000 సంవత్సరాల క్రితం నుండే మానవ నాగరికత ప్రారంభమైందని చెప్పుకుంటూ శ్రామణి సంస్కృతిలో అంటే శ్రమపడే తత్వం కలిగినటువంటి దగ్గర నుండి మొదలుకొని నేటి సమాజం వరకు జరుగుతున్నటువంటి విషయాల పట్ల చాలా స్పష్టంగా మతము, వాటికి సంబంధించినటువంటి అనేక విషయాలు, ధర్మము, వీటన్నిటి గురించి చాలా స్పష్టంగా చెప్పుకుంటూనే ఈ దేశంలో ఉండేటువంటి గాంధీ గురించి కానీ, అంబేద్కర్ గురించి కానీ, ఇతరుల గురించి కానీ చాలా గొప్పగా చెప్పడం అనేటువంటిది జరిగింది. వారికి మా తెలంగాణ జనవేదిక తరఫున ప్రత్యేకమైనటువంటి ధన్యవాదాలు సార్. ఇప్పుడు మిత్రులు ఎవరైనా ప్రశ్నలు కానీ ఏమైనా డౌట్స్ కానీ ఉంటే
శివనాగిరెడ్డి ఈమని.
శివనాగిరెడ్డి,
ప్లీజ్ అన్మ్యూట్ యువర్సెల్ఫ్ sir.
Able to do. Yes. Sir, good evening to the group. A wonderful group that have organized a very nice talk to become a man, a wholesome man. A wonderful talk, sir. My request is to sir that could it be brought into Telugu so that many more could be benefited out of reading it, who have missed to listen to Anjaney Reddy sir. That is my request to the organizers, or I can also make a request to sir personally. And one more thing, sir, kindly go on organizing such talks so that at least for me, I benefited a lot during this 1 hour. As sir said, I would definitely would like to become a better man from at least this point of the time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, please, anybody having any questions, please raise your hands. I will unmute you, please.
If there are no questions, then I would like to make an appeal. I would request all of you to visit Mahabodhi Buddha Vihara at Mahendra Hills. If you want to see a functioning monastery, how the old monasteries in India function, same on the same lines, how a modern monastery is now functioning. It's in Mahendra Hills, Secunderabad. particularly any day you are welcome. If you come in the afternoon, you can see the Buddhist chanting, listen to Buddhist chanting. And every Sunday, life-related problems are also discussed by the monks with the people. They can take your personal problems also and discuss with them. They will try to find a solution in the light of what Buddha said.
Dr. Venkatramana
This
wants
is
to
one.
ask
And
a
second,
question, sir. Dr.
Yeah.
Venkatramana wants to ask a question. Venkatramana, please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead.
Very good evening, sir. It is really a wonderful presentation. All along, sir has been trying to establish Buddhism as an autonomous religion. As he has rightly pointed out, other principal religions have ritualistic and suffer from dogma. I think even Buddhism also has some rituals, particularly the rituals that lamas follow. How do you justify?
Rituals of?
The lamas that follow.
Yeah, this is an important question because, you have three phases of Buddhism. We follow the earliest phase, what's called Theravada Buddhism, in which there are no rituals at all. Second is Mahayana. We don't any longer call it Hinayana. We have given up that name. We call it Theravada. Then Mahayana. Third one is Vajrayana. Vajrayana has a lot of rituals. Vajrayana is followed only in the Himalayan region and also in Tibet. This Vajrayana has rituals. They are more cultural than religious. They are essentially Tibetan culture got mixed with Buddhism. And then, that's why Dalai Lama also said now, Vajrayana Buddhism should not be taught to non-Tibetans. Only Tibetans it should be taught, and others should be taught Mahayana. That's what he said. And these rituals are more cultural. More cultural. Actually, and some other day we'll talk about it. What is this Theravada? What is Mahayana? And what is Vajrayana? We'll discuss it later. It has something to do. It is a big, long talk on that. And then we can discuss that also, then you will understand. But old Buddhism, it does not have any rituals. It has only chanting. Chanting means you are recalling the qualities of Buddha, recalling the qualities of Dharma, recalling the qualities of Sangha. For example, there is a thing called Marananusati. Marananusati is recollecting death every day. You must remember you are impermanent. You must know that any time you can die. What does it say? It says many people have died. Even Buddhas have died. Why do you think you are going to be there forever? This kind of ideas are promoted. They try to make you understand. Eminent people have made a lot of money. People have made, they also die. Everybody is dying. What of us? There's nothing unusual. Everybody dies. This is how they try to convince people. Similarly, all the Buddhist chanting says, if by virtue of the strength of truth, I will be saved. By virtue of the strength of truth, by virtue of truth, this will happen, that will happen. This is how they tell you. They don't ask you to rely on any god or any ritual. It has no magical transformation of things. No, nothing is permitted. On the other hand, Buddha, in his monastic discipline, for 4 things people can be expelled from Buddhist Sangha. 1, if he kills any living being. Second, if he indulges in sexual misconduct, he violates his brahmacharya vow. Third, if he claims he has supernatural powers, he can be expelled from the Sangha. So that means all these rituals, supernatural powers are severely discounted in Buddhism, particularly old Buddhism.
Sir, in relation to this, just one thing. Why could Buddhism establish itself as a principal religion in comparison to Hinduism? It had been expanded itself to Central Asia, Southeast Asia, and parts of Europe, but it could not effectively penetrate into common people.
No, that is because all ideas of Buddhism have been borrowed into what you now call Hinduism. For example, doctrine of karma, doctrine of transmigration of soul, doctrine of rebirth. All these are Brahmanic ideas. They were borrowed into it, and then it's Buddhism, Hinduism being a very syncretic religion. And afterwards, they started saying Buddha is the avatar of Vishnu. Vishnu Puranam is 12th century work. whereas Buddha was in 5th century BC. 1700 years of difference. And then they say Buddha is an avatar of Vishnu. Because of the syncretism, absorbing everything else into, they have observed Sai Baba, who was a Muslim, isn't it? They have observed Ayyappa is supposed to be born of two men. He is also observed as a god. Sai Baba is a Muslim. He is observed, and all kinds of people. Everybody is observed into Hinduism, and that is how Buddhism was absorbed into Hinduism, and people saw no difference between the two in course of time. Even when Yuan-Sang came to Amaravati in 6th or 7th century AD, he found Buddha being worshipped, not as Buddha, worshipped as an avatar of Vishnu. So this Bhagavatism also is responsible for Buddhism being absorbed. I think it is in an evolution way it has happened. It's the fundamentals are forgotten. And then when Tantra came in, Tantra affected Vaishnavism, Tantra affected Shaivism, Tantra affected Buddhism also. Then people saw no difference. It's all one and the same one, mantra, same thing being done. And that's how, Buddhism came to be. It has lost its character around 10th, 11th century, and it became weak. And then the invasions from Western Asia and Middle East. These are all various reasons responsible. It could not establish itself. Yeah, it did establish itself. In fact, if you want, there's a book called Influence of Buddhism on Indian Life. It clearly shows many of the ideas which you today think are Hindu are essentially Buddhist. For example, Telugulo నీకు నామరూపాలు లేకుండా పోతాం అంటారు. నామరూపం అనేది typical Buddhist word. Our language was influenced, our everything was influenced by Buddhism in a big way.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There's last two questions I will allow. One is Dr. Sanjay.
Sir, mute lo unnaru.
Dr. Sanjay, please unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Sir, Namo Buddhaya, sir. Sir, my question to sir is, sir, decline in Buddhism is from the land of its origin is a very well known lesson for all of us. Sir, what we learn from it in view of spreading Buddhism, because you said that promoting and propagating any religion in a secular nation like ours should not be there. Then these good things should spread. In what way it should spread, sir?
Naturally, this is a very important. Propagating, by propagation, I mean taking to the streets, organizing processions, organizing meetings, organizing conversion meetings, organizing Suvarta Sabhas. Why should all these things be there? Gospel meetings and all that. As similarly, these people also, other religions also, they do it. Buddhism, by the very strength, by its very core strength, I am sure people will come to Buddhism. Even we need not go out into the streets and invite people. But once you, promote what is called engaged Buddhism, that is Buddhism engaged with the society, automatically, people will reach out and people will come to Buddhism.
Yes.
When what I am saying is, it should not be brought into, religion should not be brought into streets. There was, we don't organize any Buddhist meetings or Buddhist processions, we don't do all that. And we should not do also. Others also should not be doing this. Occupying roads in the name of prayers. Why should we do it?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Sir, when the British, they came to India and they did the excavations, what they found that the stupas and the Buddha idols, except Buddhist. So that was the thing which was missing in India. So how to overcome these kind of things? In what way the international community also can help us? And now 75 years after post-independence, and we have also come up a long way. So what would be the means that we should be practicing that it would be, because Baba Sahib used to say, I want practicing Buddhists to be there. So what is your opinion regarding this, sir?
Naturally, this is what I'm saying. Key ideas of Buddhism should be identified and brought into polity, brought into economics, brought into conservation, brought into education, brought into various aspects of our life. This key, there is no organized effort. For example, today, Buddhism is not part of Indian syllabus, school syllabus. Now, in fact, with great difficulty, I got it included at one stage. Dhammapadam was introduced as part of syllabus. 2-3 years later, it was again removed. See, Jainism, Buddhism, another thing is your understanding of Pali and the knowledge of Pali and Prakrit languages.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Sanskrit. Every third person knows Sanskrit. He says the Sanskrit Pandit. How many people know Pali? How many people know Prakritam? As long as you don't know Prakritam and Pali, that means you don't understand 75% of Indian culture.
Yeah, exactly.
Your
Yeah.
Sanskrit is a much later development. Earlier literature, for example, the entire Brihat Katha, which is the source material for all Indian culture, was in Paisachika Prakritam.
Yes.
So
It is a-
you should promote this classical. In fact, we gave a representation to our Vice President, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, before his retirement. He wanted a note on that. We gave it to him, saying your central university should teach classical languages, which includes Pali, which includes Prakritam, not merely Sanskrit. There's no point in teaching Hindi, Telugu there. You teach classical languages so that our literature in Prakritam also receives attention. Today, enormous Jain literature is available. None of us really know anything about it. Fortunately, thanks to the British, Buddhist literature is in light. Jain literature is completely forgotten. And Jains are among the richest people in this country. They are not aware of their own traditional culture.
Yeah, very true, sir. Because it is very rightly said that if you wish to know the truth of the life, you should understand Pali language.
Yes.
Yeah, and yes, and Baba Sahib has
Pali
also
and
included in the
Jain-
seventh schedule. Yes.
Jain Prakritam also, it should be taught in all Indian central universities. We gave a
Yes, sir.
representation on this.
Yeah, and one he brought out one complete volume on the Pali grammar and everything. Baba Sahib during his lifetime itself. That's a great thing that he did.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Shandeep.
sir. Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you very much, sir.
There's one more question. This is the last question I will allow. J. Anand Rao. Please unmute yourself and ask the question, please.
సార్ నమోబుదాయ్ సార్, చాలా బాగుంది సార్ మీరు చెప్పింది. నా ఒక డౌట్ సార్, సార్ మీరు చెప్పారు ఫస్ట్ నుంచి అంటే బిఫోర్ మౌర్య నుంచి ప్లస్ ఆర్యన్ కల్చర్ నుంచి చెప్పారు. సో ఆఫ్టర్ మౌర్య బుద్ధిజం డిక్లైన్ అయింది. అది బుద్ధిజం ని డిక్లైన్ చేసిన వాళ్ళు కూడా నేను ఇక్కడ చెప్పాను, అందరికి తెలిసిందే. సో ఇప్పుడు ప్రజెంట్ సినారియో అప్పటి నుంచి డిక్లైన్ అయినప్పటి నుంచి చాలా మందిని అంటే బుద్ధిస్ట్ భిక్షుస్ లని చంపేయడము. సో వాళ్ళు వెళ్ళేసేసి నియర్ బై కంట్రీస్ లో లైక్ బర్మా, శ్రీలంక, ఈ నియర్ బై కంట్రీస్ లలో అక్కడ వెళ్ళేసేసి సెటిల్ అవ్వడం. అండ్ ప్రెసెంట్లీ మనం ఇప్పుడు కూడా చూస్తున్నాం సార్, అంటే ఇప్పుడు కొత్త భిక్షుస్ కావాలంటే మనం ఎక్కడో బర్మనో లేకుంటే శ్రీలంకనో వెళ్ళేసేసి దీక్ష తీసుకుంటున్నాం, నేర్చుకుంటున్నాం బుద్ధిజం నుంచి. మన దగ్గర ఇప్పుడైతే వచ్చింది, మీరు అన్నట్టు తెలుగులో కూడా వస్తుంది ఇప్పుడు మీరు చేస్తున్నారు కాబట్టి. ఇంతకు ముందు అయితే మన దగ్గర లిటరేచర్స్ ఏం లేదు. ప్లస్ శ్రీలంకల నుంచి అక్కడ నుంచి ప్లస్ చైనా నుంచి అక్కడ నుంచి తీసుకొచ్చేసి ఇచ్చారు. కానీ ఇప్పుడు సార్ ఇప్పుడు జరిగిన సిచ్యువేషన్స్ లలో ఇప్పుడు ఈ చెప్పిన బర్మా ప్లస్ శ్రీలంక ఈ అన్స్టేబులైజ్ చేసేసారు సార్. అంటే బర్మాని లాస్ట్ 2 years బ్యాక్ మిలిటరీ రూల్స్ ని తీసుకొచ్చారు అక్కడ నుంచి. ప్లస్ శ్రీలంకని ఇప్పుడు అన్స్టేబులైజ్ చేసేసేసి అసలు ఈ కాన్స్పిరెన్సీ వెనకాల ఏమన్నా మనోళ్ళది హ్యాండ్ ఉందంటారా సార్? ఇది హ్యాండ్ ఉంటే మనం ఏం చేయాలి?
అది ఏమి లేదు, కాన్స్పిరసీ ఏం లేదు. See, the Sri Lankan bhikkhus have always been militant. From 10th century onwards, they were nationalism and Buddhism got mixed up there. Burmese, of course, this seems to be a madman like our Putin of Russia. This seems to be another madman in Asia. There is another madman in North Korea also. North Korea, Burma, Putin, these are all people, the sick minds.
Sir.
He is an army officer. This man is an army man. How could he be responsible for the death of at least 60 people in Burma? In police,
Sir.
at least Sri Lankan agitation, there were no deaths.
Sir.
Police didn't open fire at all.
సారీ టు ఇంటర్ఫియర్ సార్, సారీ టు ఇంటర్ఫియర్. అంటే శ్రీలంక అంటే ఎలక్ట్రిసిటీ వాళ్ళు డైరెక్ట్ ఓపెన్ గా స్టేట్మెంట్ ఇచ్చారు బికాస్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా పొలిటికల్ అక్కడ కాన్స్పిరెన్సీ అట్లా జరిగింది, స్కామ్ జరిగింది అని. సో
I don't know all those things, but I'm talking of Buddhist culture part of it. Sri Lankan monks have always been militant.
Thank you, Anand Rao garu. Thank you so much.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. థ్యాంక్ యూ
Sir,
ఇంకొక విషయం చెప్పాలి నేను రామారావు గారు, ప్రతి ఒక్కరు బుద్ధవనం చూడాలి. ఎందుకు చూడాలి అంటే యువర్ ఎంటైర్ బుద్ధిస్ట్ హెరిటేజ్ we try to represent it there in బుద్ధవనం. Amaravati School of Art, your Panigiri, inta Amaravati School of Art కింద వస్తుంది. For it was dead for 1700 years. That was revived.
Sir.
And the new Buddha Vanam, and you can see the whole of Amaravati art at one place.
Yes.
I appeal to all
Sure.
of you, please
Sure,
find
yeah,
time.
we'll definitely.
This is the
go
right
and-
time also.
Yes,
Right
yes,
time also.
yes.
Weather is nice. You will really enjoy it. You can see how the old stupas was like, how the world stupas. We put replicas of all world stupas there, Jataka stories, all those things. Entire Buddhist heritage we try to represent at one place. But that was Vijaypuri was once the goddess of a, I mean, it was once the center of great Buddhist culture. So I appeal to all of you to go and see it once. You will appreciate our own heritage.
Thank you,
Otherwise, people are stuck with Yadagar Gutta, Tirupati, and Srisalam, and these 3-4. You go and see this. You will realize what you have not,
Yes, sir. Yes.
what you have missed out.
Definitely.
So one question from Sri P. Koteshwar Rao. Seems to be an elderly person. Sir, please unmute yourself. Koteshwar Rao garu. Koteshwar Rao
కోటేశ్వరరావు
garu,
గారు.
unmute చేసుకోండి సార్.
సార్
మాట్లాడండి సార్.
సార్
చెప్పండి.
సార్ ఆంజనేయ రెడ్డి గారికి థ్యాంక్ యూ అండి. ఇవాళ చాలా బాగుంది. మన శిరసిత కాకుండా ఈ ప్రజావేదికలో కూడా వచ్చి మీరు చెప్పడం అనేది చాలా బాగుంది. ఇంకొకటి ఏంటంటే ఇంతకు ముందే నా క్వశ్చన్ క్లారిఫై చేశారు. ఈ స్కూల్ లెవెల్ నుంచి మనకి సిలబస్లో ఎక్కడన్నా ఈ బుద్ధిజం గురించి స్టార్ట్ చేస్తే అది చాలా బాగుంటుందని నా ఉద్దేశం.
తప్పకుండా చేయాలని మనం ప్రయత్నం చేస్తాము.
నేను
Representation
కెనడాలో
ఇస్తాము.
ఉన్నాను.
Hmm.
పిల్లల దగ్గర కెనడాలో వచ్చాను. అక్కడ నుంచి వాచ్
Oh,
చేస్తున్నాను.
thank you.
థ్యాంక్ యూ.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. థ్యాంక్ యూ కోటేశ్వరరావు సార్.
Yeah, చర్చా వేదికలో
Thank you.
నేడు గాయకున్న అరుదైన సబ్జెక్టు భారతీయ సంస్కృతిలోకి చరిత్ర మూలాల్లోకి తీసుకెళ్లి ఆంజనేయ రెడ్డి గారు అద్భుతమైన ప్రసంగించారు. ధన్యవాదాలు. సురేష్ వరియోగి గారు చాట్ బాక్స్ లో పెట్టినారు. తర్వాత ఇట్స్ అన్ ఎక్సలెంట్ ద తెలుగు వర్షన్ ఓకే దట్స్ ఆల్రెడీ డన్ నాగిరెడ్డి గారు చెప్పినారు. That's all in this box. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank
సార్.
you.
తెలంగాణ
you.
జన వేదిక జూమ్ ఆన్లైన్ మీటింగ్ కు విచ్చేసి కీలక ఉపన్యాసం ఇచ్చినటువంటి ఈ దేశంలో బుద్ధిజం మనకు ఎందుకు అవసరం అనేటువంటి అంశం మీద శ్రీ ఆంజనేయ రెడ్డి గారు కీలక ఉపన్యాసం ఇచ్చారు. వారికి మా తెలంగాణ జన వేదిక తరఫున ప్రత్యేకమైనటువంటి ధన్యవాదాలు సార్. అదే విధంగా ఈనాటి కార్యక్రమంలో పాల్గొన్నటువంటి చాలా మంది పెద్దలు వివిధ దేశాల నుండి కూడా వాళ్ళ పాల్గొన్నారు. ప్రధానంగా వెంకటరమణ గారు, ఆంజనేయరావు గారు, ఆనందరావు గారు, సురేంద్రరావు గారు మరియు ఇతర అందరికీ పేరు పేరున ధన్యవాదాలు తెలుపుతూ ఈనాటి కార్యక్రమంలో ఇంకొక ముందుకుంటాం. మళ్ళీ వచ్చే వారం అంశంతో కలుపుతామని తెలియజేస్తూ సెలవు తీసుకుంటాం.